I'm Chef Susan Odell. Welcome to the Foodell Kitchen. Let's talk onions. You're going to be using a lot of them whenever you cook savory dishes. Well, most of the time they're called for. We want to show you how to chop them, how to prepare them, and the different kinds of onions that you're probably going to come across in recipes. These are your basic onions. First of all, we've got green onions. These are fresh. They're grown in the ground. The green stalks come off. They cut them and sell them fresh. The dried onion is what you get with the papery skin. These have been dried and will last in a cool, dry place for a good couple of months if it's not too humid. If you have a really humid environment, keep them in the refrigerator, but it's better to keep them in a dark pantry or something. The fresh onions should be kept in your refrigerator, and these will last a good week or so, depending on how fresh they are when you buy them. The basic type of dried onions you're going to see are white, yellow, and red. And these are pretty mild in flavor, although the red is a little bit sweeter. I typically go for the yellow onion just because I think it's a good all-purpose onion when I'm cooking. You're also going to see a lot of varieties of sweet onions depending on where you live. Sweet onions are trademarked, and you'll see names like Vidalia, 1015, Walla Walla. If those sound familiar, those are trademark onions that have a high sugar content, and they're grown typically in areas where the sulfur in the soil is very low, so you get a good sweet flavor. Use these raw. These are typically better used raw because they are so sweet. Their sugar can leach out into dishes if you cook them too long. So sweet onions, use raw. Other onions, cook. Do whatever you want with them. Let's have a look at how to prepare them. Let's first look at the green onion, or scallion as they're also known. These are fresh, and so they should be nice and mild and sweet. Look for good dark green leaves on these onions. These are nice to eat raw in salads and things, but you can also throw them in towards the end of cooking, maybe in eggs or a stir fry, for example. Here's how to slice them. First thing you want to do is chop off the root end. You don't need to peel green onions unless there's something like this that's sort of hanging off at that outer layer of skin. Then you can go ahead and take it off for ease of preparation. Give it a good wash because you're going to get dirt throughout these leaves. And once you wash it, recipes typically call for just sliced green onions. And all you're going to do is run your knife down the length of the onion and slice it as thinly or as thickly as you want. Some recipes also call for a more decorative finish, and you might want to slice it on the diagonal. Green onions also lend themselves to being a very pretty garnish. If you cut off the root end and cut off a good chunk of the top bit, you can then make a slice lengthwise but not going all the way to the end, and then turn it a quarter of a turn and make another slice to give yourself some petals. Then you just stick it in some cold water with some ice cubes and let it sit for a few minutes, and we're going to come up with a nice little flower garnish. We'll come back to that at the end. We talked about 3 different kinds of dried onions, actually 4 including the sweet one. They all pretty much cut the same, so I'm just going to use my yellow onion to demonstrate, first of all, slicing it and then chopping it. This is a really, really important technique because you're going to use it all the time. Learn how to properly cut an onion, and it will make your cooking preparation really, really fast. Let's have a look. First thing you always want to do when you have a round object is get yourself a flat surface. Cut off the non-root end of the onion and then put it down flat on your board. The onion has sulfur in it, all onions do, and the more sulfur that's released, the more it makes you want to cry. So try and keep it down flat and you'll minimize the tears. Now I'm going to slice it halfway and in half directly through the root. The idea is to keep the root intact as long as possible, then it keeps my onion slices together. For this half of the onion, I'm going to first peel it, and then I'm just going to slice it. All I'm doing to slice the onion is using my knuckles as a guide on the back of my knife. This is a standard chopping technique. This helps you determine how thick you want your slices. If you want a thicker slice, move your knuckles back and use that as a guide. And for very thin slices, just barely move your nails along the onion and use your knife again to just make nice thin slices. Now to chop the other half of this onion, let's first again peel it. You want to use your palm to hold this onion steady. Keep your little fingers up in the air and your palm hard on the onion. Turn your knife parallel to the board and cut horizontally through the onion in several different layers, depending on how ultimately thick you're going to want your chopping to be. This is going to be a pretty small dice. So I've got my horizontal layers. I'm going to come this direction, and I'm going to now cut perpendicular to my cutting board. Again, I'm using the back of my knuckles to determine how thick I want my slices. And one really important thing, I've got my root end still attached. I'm not going all the way through the root, so that's holding my onion together for me while I'm chopping it. Now that I've got my horizontal slices, my perpendicular slices, I'm going to go straight down, and I've got my chopped onion. And I don't need to do anything else to it. The less you chop your onion, the less you agitate it, for example, by going like this, the less you do that, the less sulfur is released and the less you're going to cry. Practice that technique over and over again. It's a great way to chop an onion, and you'll be happy you did because it'll make your prep really fast. I almost forgot the onion flour that we put in cold water at the beginning, our scallion. Once you put it in cold water, as iced water actually, for a little while, it comes out looking like a beautiful little palm tree or flower. Great for garnishes, beautiful for crudité platters at your parties, and kind of fun to look at. So you're going to use onions a lot when you cook. Learn this method of chopping. It's going to make your life so much easier, and you're going to cry a lot less. Sulfur is released the more you run your knife through the onion, so the least amount of times that you slice it, the better. If you're really sensitive, invest in some onion goggles. Those have been the best thing that I've found to stop the crying. Enjoy your onions, and bon appetit.